Your life looks fine. Nothing is obviously wrong, but you feel empty. And the worst part is this: you can't explain why. Carl Jung believed this kind of emptiness appears not when life is failing, but when you've been living on the surface for too long. This video explains why that feeling appears even when life seems fine. At some point, you notice something strange. You don't feel excited. You don't feel deeply interested. Things that used to matter don't really touch you anymore. And that's what makes it confusing. Because when life is hard, emptiness makes sense. But when life is okay, this feeling feels wrong, almost inappropriate. So most people don't talk about it. They assume something is broken inside them. They assume they are ungrateful, lazy, unmotivated. They tell themselves, others have it worse. I shouldn't feel this way. I just need to try harder. And that's where the real problem begins. Carl Jung noticed this pattern long before it became common. He observed that emptiness often appears not when life is failing, but when life is functioning on the surface, while something essential inside is being ignored. This kind of emptiness is not dramatic. It doesn't scream. It doesn't demand attention. It just quietly drains meaning. You keep moving forward, but nothing feels personal anymore. You achieve things, but they don't register emotionally. You rest, but you don't feel restored. And because there is no obvious cause, you start blaming yourself. But this emptiness is not a flaw. It is a signal. Jung believed that the human mind cannot stay fulfilled when it is living only on the surface level, doing what is expected, following routines, adapting to roles, while deeper needs are pushed aside. Modern life is very good at keeping people busy, very good at keeping people functional, very good at keeping people distracted, but it is not very good at helping people stay connected to themselves. So what happens? You become efficient, responsible, reliable, and slowly you become disconnected. Disconnected from curiosity, from inner movement, from the feeling that something matters for you, not just for others. This is why the emptiness feels so confusing. Nothing collapsed, nothing dramatic happened. You didn't fail. You simply adapted for too long. Carl Jung noticed that many people reach this state after years of doing the right things, choosing stability over interest, safety over curiosity, approval over authenticity. Not because they were weak, but because they were trying to survive and belong. Over time, this creates an inner gap. On one side, your daily life, your roles, your obligations. On the other side, parts of you that were never fully lived, explored, or expressed. The emptiness appears in the space between those two sides. And the reason it feels so uncomfortable is because it cannot be fixed with motivation. You can't force yourself to feel meaning. You can't discipline yourself out of emptiness. You can't be grateful your way back to inner fullness. That's why people feel stuck. They try productivity. They try positivity. They try pushing forward, and nothing changes. Carl Jung warned that when inner life is ignored for too long, the psyche responds by withdrawing energy. Interest fades. Desire weakens. Life feels dull. Not as punishment, but as protection. Because the mind is signaling that something essential has been neglected. This emptiness is not telling you that life is pointless. It is telling you that your inner life has been sidelined for too long. And until that imbalance is addressed, no external improvement will fill the gap. The emptiness remains, quiet, persistent, and confusing, until it is understood for what it actually is. When this feeling of emptiness appears, most people instinctively try to fix it. They assume it's a motivation problem, so they push themselves harder. They assume it's boredom, So they add more stimulation. They assume it's tiredness. So they rest, take breaks, change routines. For a short time, something might improve, but the emptiness always comes back. That's because this feeling is not caused by a lack of effort, not caused by exhaustion. Carl Jung believed this kind of emptiness appears when a person has been living too long only through external expectations. In simple words, you've been living a life that works, but not a life that belongs to you. From a young age, most people learn to adapt. They learn what is acceptable, what is rewarded, what keeps things stable. You learn which parts of you are useful and which parts are inconvenient. So you adjust. You suppress certain interests. You ignore certain questions. You postpone certain inner impulses, not because they are wrong, but because they don't fit easily into everyday life. Over time, this becomes normal. You stop asking what genuinely moves you. You stop noticing what quietly drains you. You stop listening to inner signals. You become good at functioning. And this is exactly where the emptiness begins. Jung described this as a loss of connection between the outer life and the inner life. On the outside, everything keeps moving forward. You meet expectations, you handle responsibilities, you appear stable. On the inside, energy slowly withdraws. Interest fades. Joy becomes muted. Curiosity weakens. Not because life is meaningless, but because you are no longer fully present in it. This emptiness doesn't feel dramatic because it isn't trying to scare you. It feels dull, flat, and heavy because it's designed to slow you down. Jung believed the psyche uses emptiness as a signal that something important has been ignored for too long. When inner needs are ignored, the mind doesn't shout. It reduces energy. That's why people say, "I don't feel like myself anymore. I don't care like I used to. Nothing really excites me." They are not broken. They are disconnected. Disconnected from parts of themselves that were once alive, curious, expressive, or creative. Modern life makes this very easy. It encourages productivity over reflection, efficiency over depth, distraction over awareness. You are constantly pulled outward, toward tasks, information, noise, and comparison. There's very little space left to notice what is happening internally. So the inner world slowly fades into the background. And when it stays there too long, emptiness appears. This is why this feeling doesn't go away, no matter how much you optimize your life. You can change jobs, change routines, change environments. But if the same inner pattern remains, adapting, suppressing, ignoring, the emptiness follows you. Jung believed that meaning is not something you add from the outside. It is something that emerges when inner life and outer life are aligned. When that alignment is lost, no amount of comfort can replace it. That's why people often say, "I have everything I wanted, but I still feel empty." Because what they wanted was shaped by expectations, not by inner truth. The emptiness is not punishment. It is not failure. It is a message that something essential inside you has been left behind for too long. And until that message is understood, the feeling will remain. Quiet, persistent, and impossible to ignore. Most people make the same mistake with emptiness. They treat it as a problem that needs to disappear. They want it gone as quickly as possible. They want to feel normal again. They want motivation back, interest back, energy back. So they distract themselves. They numb it. They fill their days with noise. But Carl Jung believed emptiness appears for a reason, and ignoring it only makes it stronger. This kind of emptiness is not random. It appears when a person has been living for too long according to roles, expectations, and habits that no longer reflect who they are inside. Jung believed that every person has an inner life that needs expression, movement, and meaning. When that inner life is consistently ignored, it doesn't disappear. It withdraws. And emptiness is the result of that withdrawal. This is why the feeling is so strange. You don't feel emotional pain. You don't feel strong sadness. You feel absence. An absence of interest, an absence of direction, an absence of emotional response. Jung saw this as the psyche pulling energy away from a life that no longer feels authentic. Not to punish you, but to force attention. Emptiness slows you down. It makes achievements feel hollow. It makes distractions less effective. It makes routine feel heavy. And because it doesn't come with clear answers, people panic. They assume something is wrong with them. But Jung believed this emptiness is often the first sign that something inside you is trying to change. Not suddenly, not dramatically, quietly. The problem is that modern life teaches people to override these signals. You're taught to push through discomfort, to stay productive, to keep functioning. So instead of listening, you keep moving, and the emptiness deepens. Jung believed that meaning does not come from doing more. It comes from reconnecting with what has been suppressed. That might be interests you abandoned, questions you stopped asking, parts of yourself you learned to hide, desires that didn't fit your life structure. Over time, these parts don't disappear. They accumulate in the background, and emptiness is the space they leave behind. This is why emptiness often appears during transitions. After achieving a goal, after settling into stability, after years of routine, after adapting for too long. Because once the external pressure eases, the inner imbalance becomes visible. Jung believed the psyche always seeks balance. If outer life grows while inner life stays frozen, the psyche responds by pulling energy away until balance is restored. That withdrawal feels like emptiness. It's not telling you to quit your life. It's not telling you everything is meaningless. It's telling you that your inner life needs space again. But this is where people get stuck. They expect a clear answer, a clear direction, a clear solution. Emptiness doesn't work like that. It doesn't give instructions. It gives discomfort, and that discomfort forces reflection. Jung believed that when people stop running from emptiness and instead allow it to exist without distraction, something begins to change. Not immediately, not dramatically, but slowly, questions return. Curiosity returns. A sense of inner movement returns. The emptiness doesn't disappear overnight. It transforms. From numbness into awareness, from absence into possibility. But only if it is taken seriously. If it is constantly avoided, it hardens. It becomes chronic. It becomes resignation. This is why Jung warned that emptiness ignored turns into long-term dissatisfaction. Not depression, but a quiet sense that life is happening somewhere else. The emptiness is not asking you to escape your life. It is asking you to reconnect with yourself inside it. And until that reconnection begins, the feeling will stay. Not loudly, not aggressively, but persistently. At this point, many people ask the same question. If this emptiness is a signal, what am I supposed to do with it? Carl Jung did not believe emptiness should be fixed quickly. He believed it should be understood first. because the moment you try to force meaning back into your life, you repeat the same mistake that created the emptiness in the first place. You try to adapt, you try to perform, you try to meet expectations, and the emptiness stays. Jung believed the way out of emptiness is not action, but attention, not dramatic changes, not quitting everything, not destroying your life, but slowly reconnecting with what has been ignored. For many people, emptiness feels overwhelming because they expect a clear solution. They want a plan, a step-by-step answer. But emptiness doesn't ask for solutions. It asks for honesty. Honesty about what no longer feels alive. Honesty about what feels forced. Honesty about how much of your life is lived for others, not for yourself. This is uncomfortable, because it means admitting that some choices were made out of fear, out of safety, out of the need to belong. And Jung never judged this. He understood that adaptation is necessary, that survival comes first, that people do what they can. But he also believed that a life built only on adaptation eventually feels empty, because adaptation without inner participation drains meaning. The emptiness begins to change when you stop treating it as an enemy, when you stop asking, "How do I get rid of this feeling?" and start asking, "What part of me has been silent for too long?" This doesn't require big answers. It starts with small awareness, noticing what quietly interests you again, noticing what drains you, noticing when you feel slightly more present, even briefly. Jung believed that meaning returns gradually, not as excitement, but as movement. A sense that something inside you is shifting. This is why emptiness often feels worse before it gets better. Because awareness breaks numbness. You begin to feel uncertainty again, doubt, questions, and that can feel frightening if you've been stable for a long time. But Jung believed this stage is necessary, because numbness is not peace, it is disconnection. And discomfort is often the first sign that connection is returning. Many people fear emptiness because they think it means life is meaningless. Jung believed the opposite. He believed emptiness appears when life is ready to become more real, not more successful, not more impressive, more personal. This doesn't mean abandoning responsibility. It means allowing inner life to exist alongside outer life. Meaning doesn't return all at once. It returns in fragments, in moments of curiosity, in small interests, in questions you stopped asking years ago. And over time, those fragments begin to connect. The emptiness softens. It doesn't vanish instantly, but it stops feeling endless. Jung believed that people who listen to this signal often emerge with a quieter, deeper sense of meaning. Not excitement, not constant happiness, but a feeling that life belongs to them again. And this is important, because the goal is not to feel full all the time. The goal is to feel connected, connected to yourself, connected to your inner movement, connected to what feels real for you. When that connection returns, emptiness no longer dominates. It becomes a phase, not a permanent state. Feeling empty when life seems fine does not mean something is wrong with you. It means something inside you has been waiting, waiting to be noticed, waiting to be included, waiting to be lived. Carl Jung believed this kind of emptiness is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of transition. And when it is taken seriously, not rushed, not numbed, not ignored, it often becomes the beginning of a more meaningful relationship with your own life.